That's right, guys. You heard me. I trolled you. We've actually got some good news to talk about. Good political news. You see, we've been talking lately about Arizona. Very conservative state, with a very, very old law about abortion that was written into its state constitution, I believe, like, before it was even a state. If I recall correctly. Like, it was in the 1850s or 1870s or 60s or something. Before it was even, like, officially a state, I'm pretty sure. And despite that, it was being used by Republicans to try to push for one of the most overwhelmingly overreaching... 1864? Okay. Overwhelmingly overreaching anti-abortion policies of any Republican state in America. It was really scary. But thank God, this actually seems to have a somewhat positive resolution. This could always change in a more negative direction at the turn of a dime. You know how politics are. You know how this shit gets. We're never safe. We're never fully safe. You can never take that deep sigh of relief and sit back and rest easy knowing your rights are safe. But this headline put a smile on my face. The history of Arizona's Civil War-era abortion ban. How conspiring doctors, questionable tonics, and twisted patriotism led to the 1864, oh there it is, Arizona abortion ban that has finally been repealed. Let's fucking go. That's what we like to see. Arizona lawmakers voted Wednesday to repeal a Civil War-era state law that amounts to a near-total ban on abortion, following an Arizona Supreme Court ruling last month that the law could be enforced. Democrats in the chamber, as well as both former President Donald Trump and the Republican state candidate, Kari Lake, and an election year shift towards a more moderate stance on abortion, had pushed the Arizona legislature to overturn the law. If it had gone into effect, it would have threatened access to reproductive care for about 1.6 million people of reproductive age. So, what was really scary about this law, especially, was how aggressively it would go after even the most acceptable by the vast majority of people's standards cases of getting an abortion. These are like cases of that one girl, like cases like that one girl who was 10 or 11 years old, I forget which, and she was raped and impregnated and was trying to seek out an abortion because she's fucking 11 years old or something and is being told she has to carry a pregnancy to term and then give birth and have a baby. And then God knows what they expect her to do after she has the baby. That was in Ohio? Yeah. These types of situations are the most scary situation for this scenario, where abortion access is shut down, where victims and children and child victims, the most of the most vulnerable, that is the scariest situation, because it means the Republicans in that state don't care about the unpopularity of these policies. They're just going to pass those policies when they gain power, and they don't care. That's a scary thought when they're willing to push for stuff like this. What's a little less scary is the fact that the rest of the Republican Party knows that abortion is a losing issue for the right. It just is. The overwhelming turn of the tide, it has been for decades now, towards pro-choice. At this point, it's like 90-something% of women are pro-choice. At that rate, like, how many men are going to be pro-choice going into the future when you consider the other stat that says something along the lines of 85 or 88% of women consider abortion, and they're, like, whether or not their partner agrees with them on it, a deal breaker. Yeah, I have a feeling that general society is really on the more vertical part of the slope towards full acceptance of pro-choice. And with that in mind, the Republicans, Trump, they know this. Trump represents the Republicans. They know this. It's why, despite all of the crazy Republicans out there that are super anti-abortion, Trump himself is still taking a centrist take on it, having a centrist stance. He knows he cannot get elected on a hardline anti-abortion stance. His Supreme Court taking away Roe v. Wade mobilized one of the biggest protests we've seen in modern politics, when all those women and men, but a lot of fucking women, went to the Capitol and protested the repealing of Roe v. Wade. Abortion is a topic that Americans do not fuck around on. Same thing goes for guns. If the Republicans are smart, they'd be hyper-focusing on protecting gun rights, which they never really do, let's be honest. All the while, attacking abortion rights on the sidelines and misdirecting, you know? Redirecting attention towards protecting guns. If they were smart, that's what they do with this right now. Guns and immigration are the right's strongest wedge issue. Healthcare, weed, really, are the Democrats' wedge issue. It's one of the several abortion laws enacted before the Supreme Court's 1973 decision in Roe v. Wade that had been revived since the justices overturned Roe in 2022. Resuscitating these laws has created legal headaches, in part because they were written in a very different time for reasons that have little in common with the concerns of anti-abortion advocates today. Arizona's ban, first passed in 1864 and codified again in 1901 and 1913, says anyone who provides supplies or administers an abortion or abortion drugs will face a state prison sentence of 2 to 5 years unless the abortion is necessary to save the life of the person who is pregnant. This is a standard that is very hard to meet, because when they say in order to save the life, it means like the woman literally has to be on a table actively internally bleeding to death or dying of like sepsis for them to like open up. You know what I mean? The standard for to save the life means on the very edge of death. Taken out of the 19th century context in which it was passed, that language would seem to amount to a near total ban on abortion. But that's not how the law was originally enforced. Few people were prosecuted under the Arizona law or similar ones in other states. I'm guessing this law was originally passed to, like, restrict, like to criminalize snake oil salesmen from, like, selling women bleach and telling them to drink it to have an abortion. Or, like, to induce, like, some deadly, like, miscarriage. I'm guessing these laws were originally written so that they could go after those dudes. And now it's being applied in a very different way, in a very different time, in a very different climate. But that's not how the law was originally enforced. Abortion laws in the mid-1800s were the product of discussions among lawyers and doctors and were designed to professionalize abortion services and medicine writ large, a seemingly noble cause, but also one driven by physicians' self-interest and the desire to both boost white women's birth rates and weaken a nascent feminist movement. There was no national abortion debate to speak of. Religion wasn't yet a major factor in Americans' views on abortion in the way it is today, and scientists had not yet developed methods to detect pregnancy during the first months of gestation. All of that meant abortion was a common, if not always safe, part of American life, despite what the old laws might suggest. Quote, "I think people imagine nobody did it because it was illegal, but we know that's not true," said Lauren McIver Thompson, a history professor at Kennesaw State University focusing on women's rights and public health. Abortion was common and widely accepted in the 19th century. For much of the first half of the 19th century, there were few laws in the US that were specifically concerned with abortion. Rather, abortion was understood in the tradition of British common law. It was only a crime after quickening, when a fetus's movement could be detected, around 4 or 5 months of gestation. Before quickening, people could be ignorant or have plausible deniability about being pregnant. Generally, the American public at this time had few moral qualms about abortion before quickening. In particular, it was a service that many believed should be offered to unmarried women, who risked perpetual ruin if they proceeded with the pregnancy and often came from poor backgrounds, as historian James Moore writes in the 1978 book Abortion in America. But around the 1800s, things started to shift. More people appeared to be seeking abortions, not just those who were unmarried. One estimate by physicians at the time that Moore cites suggests that as many as 1 in 5 pregnancies ended in abortion. Partially because of this, birth rates fell dramatically, from 7.04 children per woman in 1800 to 3.56 by 1900, according to Moore. Starting around the 1830s, abortion became a lucrative industry. It was still mostly unregulated, but perceived as largely safe, especially when weighed against the risks of pregnancy. There is little available data on maternal mortality rates in the US at the time, but even by 1915, after the development of antisepsis, it was about 600 in every 100,000 births, higher than in some European countries at the time. In 2021, the US maternal mortality rate was 32.9 deaths per 100,000 live births. That is still a scary amount of deaths. Women die way too much giving birth. It's really scary. As Moore writes, home medical manuals and midwifery texts advise readers on abortifacient substances, such as black hellebore. What a fucking awesome name for like an ingredient, black hellebore. It's spelled black, Hellebore. Black hellebore, and practices that could bring about an abortion, such as bloodletting and raising great weights. So I'm guessing bloodletting means if you lose enough blood, the body loses the capability to support the child and induces like it either kills the child and that causes a miscarriage, or the other way around, it causes a miscarriage because the body can't support the fetus. And then, of course, raising weights might just mean, like, lifting weights fucking can you not lift weights when you're pregnant? Will it literally cause a, I guess it can, yeah. Base name, yeah. Abortifacient tonics of varying effectiveness were prolifically, sorry, I'm so fucking stoned. Prolifically advertised. Physicians, midwives, and even untrained practitioners offered procedures to clear obstructed menses. What a weird way to refer to. I love like old 1900s and before medicine shit, where it's like, you gotta balance your humors, you know? One abortion provider to the elites, known as Madame Restel, amassed a fortune estimated to up to 1 million. Mind you, in 1800s money, that's an insane amount of, insanely rich, 1 million. Increased access to abortion seen throughout the 19th century led to increased scrutiny, however, and that led to many of the laws and attitudes still with us today. The beginnings of the anti-abortion movement. The anti-abortion movement began to take off in the 1850s for a few reasons. For one, anti-abortionists resented the fact that wealthy white Protestant women were starting to drive demand for abortions, usually to limit their family size or delay having their first child. It goes all the way back to women's suffrage, when women were starting to try to gain some level of independence from their fathers and husbands. That's where it goes back to. When women started to want to not want to give birth at 20 and get locked into marriage. That was the moment when men started saying, we've got to go against this abortion thing. It's giving these women way too much freedom. These women were seen as shirking their duties to Republican motherhood, and a concept that involved raising the next generation of productive citizens instilled with the values espoused by the young American Republic, and that excluded non-white women. They were maligned for indulging priorities outside of the home. It's just America first shit, but back in like the 1800s here. They were maligned for indulging... Oh, my lights went out. Notice how all this shit is nothing different from what the, like, fresh and fit incel types say today? Absolutely wild. The first standalone law to specifically prohibit abortion in the U.S. was passed in Massachusetts in 1845. It made performing an abortion a misdemeanor, for which an offender could serve 5 to 7 years in jail and face up to a $2,000 fine, about $74,000 in 2024 dollars, or a felony in cases where the person having the procedure died. So, you go back, and a long time ago, they passed these laws. Maybe they were a little more justified, considering that there were people that could have been giving pretty dangerous abortions. But overall, it really does just stem back to men wanting to control women. Women wanted to not have to get wedlocked, or what is it called? Baby locked? Is that the term? Baby locked. And men immediately got upset, men in power, and they started attacking abortion as a right for these women to access aggressively. So now we fast forward to today, well, not today, but a few days ago, and we get the current, headline. Arizona isn't alone in dealing with a pre-Roe anti-abortion law. Oklahoma is currently enforcing a 1910 abortion law. Wisconsin's Democratic Attorney General has asked the state Supreme Court to strike down that state's 1849 ban. Delaware, New Mexico, and Michigan have repealed their pre-Roe bans only in the last few years. Western Virginia's 19th century ban was blocked in court in 2022, but the state legislature moved quickly to codify a new abortion ban that allows few exceptions. As part of the Arizona Supreme Court ruling, the state was supposed to ensure the 19th century law was harmonized with the ban after 15 weeks of pregnancy passed in March 2022. It's not clear what that meant in practice, but now that the Arizona legislature has repealed the law, it's a moot issue. If lawmakers had not intervened, though, its enforcement would have looked very different from the way the law was interpreted in the years immediately after its passage. As mentioned, enforcement was spotty in the 19th century, and unlike now, abortion providers continued to operate despite facing potential legal repercussions. Procedures of abortifacients often circumvented bans by using euphemistic language to describe their products. Early abortion laws include the Arizona ban, also empowered physicians to make decisions about abortion. Quote, a lot of these laws were at least supported, if not written by physicians. Withicombe wrote, physicians agree that they have complete discretion over whether an abortion is medically necessary. However, doctors have often been sidelined in the enforcement of abortion bans post-Roe, with many choosing to leave states with restrictive laws because they feel they cannot perform life-saving care. That's the core difference. Way back then when these laws were written in the 1800s and 1900s, doctors helped write them. Now, doctors are the ones being demonized as they try and pass these laws in the courtroom. Doctors are framed as the villains now. The medical and popular understanding of pregnancy and abortion has also evolved since 1864. We can now detect pregnancy much earlier than quickening using urine and blood tests. In the 1860s, early abortions were generally seen as morally equivalent to contraception, Moore writes, a concept that the American right largely rejects today. Quote, these laws are being upheld as proof that everyone was completely against abortion in all cases from the moment of conception, Withicombe said. Given the understanding of human development at that time, that is not true in the 1860s. The fact is, conservatives today are arguably more conservative than conservatives in the 1800s. Isn't that kind of a scary thought? The fact that the conservatives aren't just like a moving, sliding scale of wanting to take America back to a set date that is constantly moving forward because they're conservative for like a later and later time. No, they outright want to return to monkey. At all times, they want to destroy society. There is no like progressing set date that like conservatives aren't getting more progressive as progressives get more progressive. They're getting more conservative. Really a scary thought, but the fact that this Arizona Civil War era abortion ban has been stopped makes me very happy. I was truly thinking that Arizona might be cooked. It's one of the more states when it comes to their legislature and their vote, frankly. So I'm really happy to see a surprising headline come out of this, and I'm happy we have at least one happy story to cover during this stream today, because the rest of the topics I have to cover are a little bit, they're kind of downers, I'm not gonna lie to you, but they're not all downers, but a lot of them are. Anyway, if you enjoyed this topic, or you didn't, or you just feel neutral about it, please consider commenting down below. I really like reading your comments, and each one boosts me in the algorithm, so it helps in two ways. I get to read your kind messages, and I get a boost in the algorithm. And if you want to help even further to boost me, you can also drop a like or a thumbs up. Every single one, no matter when, where, or what you're watching, boosts my channel and videos in the algorithm, and basically means a whole bunch more people end up seeing my content. It helps a lot, so if you haven't done so already, please consider hitting that like button. And subscribe and ring the bell icon too. You can also follow my social medias linked down below, and if you haven't already, please consider supporting me financially. It really helps a lot. You can donate, subscribe, or gift a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or support me financially through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, StreamElements, Patreon, or buying merch through my Streamlabs linked down below, along with everything else. And of course, if you haven't already, please consider joining my Discord server, linked down below as well. It's totally free. It is the hub of my fan base, and we do all sorts of cool events in there. I do watch parties, call-in streams, game events, and I announce all my uploads and streams there, so as long as you've got notifications on, you won't miss anything. I really hope to see you there, and I hope you enjoyed.